Fun fact, you don't need to stop writing for 18 years when you have children. On this channel, I always talk about how to fit writing into the life that you actually do have and not some kind of an ideal Instagram life that you'd like to have. And that's why writing when your children are home all day for the summer holidays is a very real reality for a lot of writers. In this video, I'm going to give you my best tips for making progress with your novel, even when you have tiny goblins at home asking for snacks every 15 minutes. And by the way, tip number 5 is my favorite. And I'm not going to suggest that all of these tips will work for every family because all families are different and children, even the same child, is different at every age. So just take what you think might work for you, try out something that you're not sure of, and just leave the rest. And no, none of the tips is going to be like, just hire a babysitter so you can write, because I'm sure you already know that writing would be easier if you didn't have your children under your foot all the time. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence like that. I'm also not going to suggest that you ship off your children to summer camp so that you can write. And I'm not going to suggest that you just give them hours of screen time every day. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Katri, I'm your new writing bestie, and this is Protagonist Crafts, the place for people who are kind of obsessed with that whole writing thing. Yes, obsessed enough to keep writing even when our children are at home. Also, in case you haven't seen all or any of my videos, I have 2 children currently aged 8 and 11. And I wrote my first published novel with a baby in my arms, not in a notebook. So I'm talking from lived experience, not just giving you some random ideas I came up with in the shower. So let's get started. Tip number 1 is adjust your expectations. Feeling bad about not writing or not writing enough is completely optional, and in fact, it will not help you write more, so just don't do it. Give yourself achievable goals and maybe shoot for a little more because you are a superstar, and then just be happy with any progress that you make, because why would you do anything else? Even people with all the time in the world to work on their writing make all kinds of excuses why they can't prioritize working on their novels. So you, with your children at home, are not somehow uniquely unequipped to do this. Greetings from the future. I realize I could have maybe worded that differently. I didn't mean to imply that anyone is making excuses, but that people who have lots of time to spend on their writing don't necessarily make any more progress if they're not actually deciding to use that time on their writing. Yes, it's going to be chaos, but life is chaos. So just embrace it rather than fight it. Again, celebrate any progress that you make, because any other approach is just nonsense. And my tip number 2 is make it a routine. I actually can write with all kinds of noise around me. The more noise is better than 0 noise. But when I'm working on Protagonist Crafts, I would very much like to have some peace and quiet, thank you. So that's why my children know, at least in theory, that between breakfast and lunch, that is mummy's working time. Will they still talk to me? Will my 80-year-old still announce every time she needs to use the toilet and demand that I say bless you every time she sneezes? Yes, but I've learned to accept it rather than fight it. After lunch, I do some more work, and they will do something fun in the afternoon before their father comes home from work. Obviously, having your children respect your writing time might not be an option if they're very small, but still having this routine around it will help them and you remember that this is an important thing that needs to happen, even if it's just for 15 minutes every day. And yes, 15 minutes might not sound like a lot, but it's still more than 0. An actual physical timer could help here. Yes, I know you want to watch Paw Patrol on the sofa, but has this timer gone brrr yet? No, that's right. So ask me again in 10 minutes. Another fun parenting trick, just tell your children, oh, come to me in 10 minutes and we'll tidy up together. I swear you're not going to see them for at least half an hour. And tip number 3 is consider what's in it for them. This is especially for smaller children, because older children, they should be able to respect people's time and space. But smaller children might need an incentive. I'm not talking about rewarding your children for letting you write in peace, but for making it fun for them as well. Will you give them a bucket of toys they only have access to while you write? Will they paint while you're working on your novel? Or could they perhaps play with slime in the bathroom? You know the best what's going to be fun and what's actually going to work for you, so just be creative. It doesn't have to be anything big or expensive. A 2-year-old will love nothing more than rummaging through your purse. If your purse is full of knives and other dangerous things, then give them a fake purse with random stuff in it. They'll love it. So make sure your writing time is a fun thing that they can expect, not just a boring, quiet time. And tip number 4 is do a time inventory. I explain this method better in my Efficient Writer workshop. There's a link in the description thing. But essentially, just think of your daily routines and think of all the times that you could potentially use for your writing. And also think of all the times when your presence is required, but not your full involvement. Could you perhaps do something writing related during those times, like maybe do some research for your novel, jot down some ideas, work on your outline or something like that? So maybe you can't work on your first draft at the playground, but you could read that book on medieval fashion and take notes for your historical fiction novel. And this might sound basic, but are you doing it? And most importantly, are you thinking ahead? And these things, they're a lot harder to do in the spur of the moment because having children, there's just so many moving parts every day that it just doesn't leave you any space for thinking. So just think ahead, like maybe tomorrow, your children will be playing with the neighbor's children and you do need to supervise, but you don't need to be playing with them. So maybe you can jot down some ideas for the first chapter of your novel, or something like that. Put that book on medieval fashion in the nappy bag now so you won't forget. And tip number 5, also known as my favorite thing to talk about, plan your story in advance so that you know exactly what you're going to write every time you sit down to write. Maybe you write standing up, whatever. You should still plan your story. I know, lots of writers like to fly by the seat of their pants. Where does that expression even come from? It sounds crazy. But anyway, not everyone likes outlining. But when you have children, when you have all this chaotic family life, then in my opinion, you can't afford to waste time just staring at the empty screen, wondering what's going to happen in your story. My free plot planner only has 3 pages, so it's very easy to plan your story, even in just one sitting. But if you'd like a full understanding of how your plot works, so that you never have to refer to a plot graph again, you should jump straight into your plot from A to Z. It's generally going to make plotting your stories easy peasy, squeezy. And don't think that there's only one right way to outline your story. You really don't need to write a cohesive synopsis of your story before you write it. Even just a bullet point list on the Chinese restaurant menu counts. Think of what works best for your unique brain. And tip number 6 is, if appropriate, involve your children in your writing process. Hey, little Steve, should Mommy kill off this character in Act 2 or Act 3? Okay, maybe not like that, but if you're writing anything that you can tell your children about, do you tell them about it? Ask their opinions. Share your source material with them. Not only children, but people in general care more about things that they feel that they've been involved in, where they've somehow been able to affect on how it turns out. So if you involve your children in your writing process, then it's going to become important for them as well. You don't need to change your plot according to your children's whims, and you don't even need to show your manuscript to them. But just have them involved in this thing so that it becomes their project as well and not just daddy's boring quiet time. Here are some example questions that you could ask your children. Hey, do you know any fun synonyms for runny? What would be the weirdest thing to happen at a busy marketplace? Quick, give me a good first name for a child. What color hair should the shape-shifting wizard have? You know your children the best, so you know what would be the most fun way to involve them in this. Maybe they'll want to draw you book covers with their crayons. And the final tip, number 7, is make writing easy to access. I actually talk more about this in my video about how I wrote 2 books while I had 2 babies, 2 separate books and 2 separate babies for clarity. But when you don't have a lot of time to write, you do want to make it as easy as possible. So maybe don't spend an entire day trying to learn how to use a new software that takes 5 minutes to open in your old laptop. Don't think you need to fit this perfectly aesthetic writing routine into your chaotic life in order to be a respectable author, whatever that is. The only thing that matters is writing, so make that writing easy. I'm a big fan of using notebooks, especially for research and outlining, but I've actually written 2 entire first drafts by hand. Very practical when you're holding a baby. Maybe you'd like dictating your stories into your phone and then transcribing them later, or maybe your method of easy access is just having a laptop on the kitchen island, so you can write a few words every time you're waiting for your frozen pizza to finish in the oven. Again, you're the expert of your life, so make the writing work with the life that you do actually have. Now, do you have to do all this? Can't you just spend time with your children? I'm not here to tell you what to do, even though I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things, but since you clicked on this video and watched all the way to the end, I assume this is something that interests you and that you want to write while your children are at home. Your attachment is not going to break from 30 minutes of writing, and I know you have the common sense to tend to any injuries or poop explosions, even if you were in the middle of writing a very good sentence. I know some people think that you need to sacrifice all of your hobbies and interests and personality traits when you have children, but it isn't true. And you also don't need to treat your children like foreigners or like these creatures from outer space that couldn't possibly ever be interested in the same things as you are. They're a part of your family, and you don't need to be following any kind of a template in order to do it right. As long as everyone is fed, watered, happy and healthy, including you, you're doing great. If you'd like more writing tips for people who don't have 8 hours every day to work on their novels, do subscribe and I will see you in another video.